Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about comfort. Now, comfort is super important to me. It was my number one. We spend a lot of time sailing and living on Wild One. The first year it was over 9 months. The second year was closer to 6, and this year was more like 7 months. Now that's a long time. It's your second home. So I wanted to make sure I was comfortable. And today we're going to talk about comfort. So I'm so glad you're joining us.
So you might be thinking to yourself, why do I want to watch this video? So there are 3 things we hope you get out of this video. First, we're going to articulate some of those areas that were important to us and why we ultimately chose a catamaran over a sloop, and identify those areas in the Nautitech 46 Open which check those boxes. Additionally, there are going to be things that we bring up that might be worthwhile for you to take a look at when you look for your next cruising catamaran. And lastly, size does matter. And we're going to give you our thoughts on size and why we chose the size we did and what it means for comfort. Obviously, one of the benefits of a catamaran are living space. Not only do we have a full hall on the port side that has our shower and our head and our bed, we also have the saloon area where we cook and lounge at the end of the day. And then we also have the cockpit area, which you'll see on our Nautitech 46 Open is pretty spacious. This is important because we found that we spend at least 10 days at anchor for every 1 day at sea. And in fact, when we're cruising around the Bahamas, most of the anchorages are less than 10 hours or so away. So most of the time, except when we're actually cruising down the coast to go to the Bahamas or going up the coast to go back to Virginia, most of the time we're not making long passages. If you go back to our previous video, we kind of mentioned this. It's important that you identify the types of areas that you want to cruise. If you want to cruise up into the northern latitudes, into Alaska or Greenland or whatever, I don't even know, maybe a catamaran isn't right for you. But if you plan to be cruising like we do, going to sunny spots, lower latitudes, close to the equator, where the islands are fairly close between, and occasionally you have to do a 3 or 4 or a couple week hop across an ocean, then maybe a catamaran makes sense to you. You obviously do give up a little bit of sailing performance when sailing the wind, but we do everything possible not to be beating into the wind, especially if it's over 15 knots and it's a long period of time. Catamarans often afford a much shallower draft. Our Nautitech 46 Open is specified at 4 feet 9 inches. We just recently measured it. I think it's just over 5 feet, just right around 5 feet. So we are obviously loaded down pretty well. We've done our best to avoid groundings in the Bahamas, whether it being mistakes, reading the charts wrong, or just inadvertently getting off a track. We've been grounded. I think this last season we grounded probably 4 or 5 times. Not significantly, not enough where we've had to get help to get pulled off, but we have actually hit bottom. And I think depending upon your cruising grounds, you're really going to need to pay attention to this. Now, it's not impossible to cruise the Bahamas in a 7-foot 8-inch draft sloop. But it does limit where you can go, and it does put additional restrictions. After owning Wild One for over 4 years now, I've come to believe that the bigger the boat, the better. And there's a couple reasons for this. First and foremost, the longer the boat, the faster it generally is. In addition, the bigger the boat, the heavier it is, and the better the motion at sea in general.
All right, this is what we got. It's 10:30 on Friday, and I think we're almost got a few more hours and we'll be out of the stream. And it's a little crazy. It has not been comfortable at all.
Bigger is always better as far as I'm concerned in terms of comfort, especially if you plan to be taking family and additional crew members or paying customers out. Of course, there's a lot of drawbacks for a bigger boat, and so you want to find the most optimal point for you. A bigger boat is more expensive to moor, to clean, to maintain, to insure. A bigger boat can quickly become a challenge to sail by a cruising couple. Lastly, who really needs 5 heads on a boat when there's only 2 of you on the boat 80% of the time? That's just silly. For us, and likely most of you, the cost to acquire the boat had much more of an influence on the size that we got than anything else. Had we known what we know now, we might have tried to push the envelope a little bit on that. I talked a little bit about this in my prior video, and if you're a sailor like me, you don't like noise. I don't know how Nautitech 46 Open compares to other boats, but in my humble opinion, Nautitech could have done a little bit better job at sound insulation, not only in the cockpit area, but also in the cabins while underway. Cruising at around 18 to 2000 RPMs in the cockpit, I see around 71 dB A-weighted of noise. One of the things I hear a lot from folks is that you should charter the boat that you might be interested in purchasing before you purchase the boat. And I think this is a great suggestion. We didn't do this for a while, but I wish we did. Unfortunately, for a lot of boat manufacturers that do not cater to the chartering industry, this is much more difficult to do. If you are lucky enough to find a boat that you can take out before you buy it, I think it's really important that you check it out in different sea states as well as different points of sail. We were able to test sail the Nautitech 46 Open out of Palm Beach. Unfortunately, there were ideal sailing conditions. Winds were 10 to 15 knots. The captain that took us out only really did a beam reach. Seas were really subdued. We really couldn't have gotten a feel at all how she would have handled in rough seas. Although we do our best to plan for the best sea states when we make our passages, we are not always successful. This is either due to schedules, bad models, or just the fact that we made a mistake. I find the decks of the Nautitech 46 Open to be acceptably wide. I think there's ample handholds. I think there can always be more. The L-shaped galley while underway provides good stability. One of the things that attracted us to the Nautitech 46 Open are the spacious, wide open cockpits. However, on some boats, you can take this too far and the cockpit can be too open and too unsafe. That said, we still do run jack lines for safety across the cockpit from one helm station to the next, and also from the cockpit all the way up to the bow of the boat on both port and starboard. Additionally, we run a jack line the full length of the boom. If you decided to buy a catamaran, one of the things that you want to consider is whether or not you want a galley up or a galley down. And a galley down has the galley in one of the halls, where a galley up has the galley flush with the cockpit and or the saloon. In my opinion, there's trade-offs to both of these designs. The Nautitech 46 Open has a galley up design. This is great when you're entertaining or you're just hanging out at anchor while cooking. You can talk while you're cooking to the people in the saloon. On the other hand, the galley up takes away from the space in the saloon area. The galley down design has a drawback that it takes away a significant amount of space in one of the halls. Generally speaking, galley down boats are larger. For our purposes, we really enjoy the galley up design. We're not cooking a lot while underway, and in fact, we cook most of our meals and freeze them so that we can just reheat them while underway. But obviously, if we're making a long distance trip, perhaps a couple or 3 weeks across an ocean, that's not going to always be possible, and you're going to have to cook while underway. So that's something to consider. The other thing to consider if you're buying a catamaran is the cabin configuration. Our Nautitech 46 Open is an owner's version. It has a dry shower, it has 3 sinks, a nice enclosed head, it has a nice sized bed, and ample storage. Nautitech 46 Open also makes a charter version where there's 4 cabins. If you plan on taking crew out regularly, that might be something to consider. If it's just going to be you and your significant other, I would go for an owner's version if you can. Furthermore, there's a trend in 40 to 46 foot catamarans that converts one of the cabins into a work area or storage area. I can tell you that even though we're an owner's version, we still use one of those cabins for storage. And then we got the upgraded mattresses from Nautitech, and I think they're actually pretty decent. Actually, I think they still feel pretty good, but I don't know. I guess we're getting older and need something a little softer, whatever. So we added a kind of a foam cover on our mattresses because you know, my shoulders and Shireen's hips and stuff like that, they weren't very expensive, but they don't last very long either. So, but I'll show you what it looks like. It ended up getting split because we had to pull it off when we were doing work in Fort Lauderdale, and it was kind of folded, and I guess the crease was too tight and it just kind of split. So
thank you so much for joining us today. If you like what you've seen, we really appreciate if you subscribe. And if you are a subscriber to the Wild One YouTube channel, we so appreciate your time and attendance. Our next video is going to be about the design, the aesthetics of the Nautitech, and what we appreciate and what we feel like there could be improvements. See you next time. And if you happen to love this video or even like it a little bit, why don't you click on subscribe and you'll get an update every time that we release a new video.
try it again.
Okay. Not me.
Yeah, you.
I nailed it the first time.
You're so arrogant.
I'm confident.
Uh-huh.
Safety and the polars of the sails and no polars. What's it called?
Sailing to be very accessible and very great. What's algorithms?
I know. Sailing algorithms. What are those things called? Sailing
polars.
Okay. But I said so many good things. I don't know if I can do
did.
that. I don't know if I can do that again. Subscribe and like and ring the subscribe bell now. I'm so hot.
Except I find the Nautitech 46 open decks to be
Next video will be.
I don't remember. You?
I don't remember what the next video will be, so you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
And there's